Am I seriously overcomplicating a simple TBR game? Yes. But isn't that within the spirit of D&D? Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to the rules instruction video for Roll for TBR, my D&D inspired TBR game. Now, I've never done this before. I've never played a TBR game. I'm not even that great at sticking to TBRs, but I really like TTRPGs, and I really want to try this out. So, what exactly am I doing here? So, how is this going to work? I am going to take a d20 and my dice tower, and I'm going to, and then, 15, not bad. And this number will tell me what prompt to pick for a book. Now, I've seen this done a little differently with some other dice-based prompts where they switch out the prompts for the numbers. However, that didn't really feel in the spirit of D&D to me, because in Dungeons & Dragons, while the number you get on the dice is random, that number's meaning isn't so much. For example, yes, if I roll a nat 1, that's really bad, and a nat 20 is really good. But if I roll a 5 and I'm trying to do a thing with my character, I'm still probably failing whatever I'm trying. Whereas if I roll a 17, I'm probably still pretty happy about whatever the outcome is going to be. So with this in mind, I am not going to do randomized prompts, but rather I have curated a list. Now, the prompt list was probably the hardest part of this. Because it isn't random, because it is functionally formatted from least liked to most liked, it was the hardest. But I did not include anything that I would not want to read. I did not decide to, go out of my comfort zone. I know why I don't like to read those genres and types of books that I don't read, and I don't see the point in making my TBR game turn reading into a chore. So I focused on all the things that I would still want to read, but then kind of, as best I could tell, rank them 1 to 20 from least liked to most liked. So, for example, if I roll a nat 1, it would be a high fantasy. That is a genre that I do still read, but it is a struggle for me, and so that would be my nat 1. However, my nat 20 would, of course, be a monster romance. At least for right now. I am effectively playtesting. And this is more or less a living document. That's why it's in pencil. I have reworked this thing 4 times already, and for all I know, once I actually start rolling and actually start getting these prompts, it might be something totally different. For example, if I get a 5, which is the prompt classic, and I was like, yes, I get to read a classic, and I'm really excited, that's not a feeling a number 5 on a dice roll should give you. So that tells me that that prompt needs to be moved up. Whereas if I go to, let's say I get an 18 and I get shifter romance, and for some reason I have just fallen out of love with shifter romance. Oh, okay. That's not an 18 feeling. 18 should be a happy feeling, so that needs to be moved down. So I fully expect that I will end up moving these around or switching them out as needed. And in general, I expect that eventually, if I play this TBR game for long enough, they'll just have to be moved out. But this, for me, is what makes this more D&D than a random dice roll. Now, when it comes to taking the actual books, there is a hierarchy that I am following. I am still trying to get review books out. I am still trying to lower my own TBR. So whenever a prompt comes up, I must first look at my list of review books to see if any books on there will fit that prompt. If none, then I will look at my already owned books to see if any books that I already have will fit that prompt. And if not, then I will start looking at getting new books. But if I'm getting new books, I will try to focus on continuing series that I have already started to try and get those finished out, especially if the series have already finished being published. That way, I'm not adding a lot more on my general reading goals, even if I'm getting new books. Now, of course, if we're doing a Dungeons & Dragons TBR game, it's not just as simple as rolling a dice and getting a number and then getting a prompt. No. We've got to make it way more complicated than that. So, what are the other rules? I am starting myself off at what I am calling level 1, which for me is 5 books, meaning that I will roll 5 times. Now, I'm definitely going to read more than that. My average month is 10, and my all-time record is 17. So, I'm definitely going to have a lot of books that I'm not reading off this TBR, but I know myself, and I know TBRs are tricky for me. So, we're going to start off simple. However, it is possible for me to level up. If I get a natural win, meaning I read every single book as I pre-picked in the TBR video, I will level up. And that means that I will add 1 more book to what I roll. So, for example, if I read everything I picked in January within that month, in February I will roll for 6 books. On top of that, I will get a temporary modifier. If you're not aware of D&D mechanics, a modifier is a number that you can add on top of what the dice shows you based on what your character's skills are. Now, most of the time, these modifiers are permanent, but I did not want to give myself a permanent modifier because if I just permanently added +3 to every roll, then the first 3 prompts that I came up with would be effectively useless. So I'm seeing this less as my character has this given talent modifier, and more like one of the modifiers that come with a spell or a channel divinity. Because sometimes in the game, for example, if my Redemption Paladin uses Emissary of Peace, she gets an extra +5 to her charisma, but it's only for 10 minutes. So it's more along those lines. I would then have to win naturally again and level up again to maintain that modifier for the next month. Now, some of you might be asking, Margaret, if there's a natural win, is there a dirty win? And for those of you who might be about to make comments because you don't know about Dungeons & Dragons, mine's out of the gutter. A dirty 20 within the realm of the game just means that the dice did not show you 20, but the dice plus what your modifier is got the number 220. So, yes, there is a dirty win in this game. For me, if I read 5 books that fit the prompts, but they are not the books I originally picked, that would be considered a dirty win. For example, I pick continue a series and I pick a specific book and then I realize I'm really not feeling it. Maybe a temporary DNF, maybe a permanent DNF, but then I pick a different book that is also continuing a series. So I still will have read 5 books that match the prompts, but they will not have been the ones that I picked ahead of time. In this case, the next month I will roll with advantage. And that simply means that I will either roll 2 times for every prompt or I will roll 2 dice at the same time and pick the higher number. I know there's like a debate of which would be better, the +3 modifier or the rolling with advantage, but this is the way I feel comfortable with it right now. However, I am effectively playtesting my own game as I do this, so I might end up, again, switching things around in the future. However, if I get a dirty win, I don't level up, and I will probably have to put a lot more thought into the books I pick to see if I can't get a natural win the next month. Lastly, the review book mechanic. For every 3 review books I read, regardless of whether or not they were picked out for the TBR the previous month, I earn the chance to re-roll once. So for example, I read 3 review books in January, and in February I roll a nat 1. I can decide to re-roll that. However, it has to be 3 books. So for example, if I review 5 books in January, that's still just 1 re-roll, and they don't carry over. So if in February I roll really well and don't want to use any of my rerolls, they will still be gone by March. So yes, if I want to keep getting rerolls, I'll have to keep reading review books. Now let's talk for a second on what won't be in the game. Any form of punishments. I will never be rolling with disadvantage. I will never be giving myself any kind of debuff. If I do not read 5 books, either the ones that I specifically picked or 5 that fit the prompts, I will simply just not have the benefits of having done those things. I will remain at the level that I am at, and I will roll for the next month with no advantage and no modifier. But I will not roll with a negative modifier or disadvantage. This is simply because I know myself. I already struggle with TBRs, and the whole point of this thing is to give me more incentive to read books that I own and review books, and as well just kind of giving me more opportunities to organize my reading, because when you have a giant number of books on your own TBR, actually picking the one you're going to read next can be a bit of a chore, and that's where this is supposed to come in. And I know myself well enough to know that if I decide to start making my reading harder based on failing, I'm going to be sticking with books that I probably should DNF, probably don't like, and I'm going to make the entire feeling of reading feel a lot worse. And that's not helpful for anyone. However, if you are interested in playing this game for yourself, you will need to come up with your own list of prompts, because the list of prompts has to be based on you and your interests. Feel free to add debuffs or negative modifiers or rolling with disadvantage if you would like to. For me, I gotta keep it positive, or else I'm probably gonna give up on this game entirely. Thank you so much for watching. If you've gotten this far, please comment down below and tell me what your Nat 1 and Nat 20 prompts would be. I'm curious. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.